Well, hello everybody. Whoops. Got a double mic going on here. All right. So I learned that if you have two computers going at the same time and both of them have audio turned on, then what ends up happening is we have an echo. So anyway, we got rid of the echo. Thank you all for being here today. We are at the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors, and my name is Kevin Burke, and there's my telephone number, and then there's my email address. Email address being kind of a backup plan if you need to get a hold of me. I'm very responsive to email, sometimes at 1 and 2 in the morning, but I do try to get back to you as quickly as possible. Telephone is the preferred method of talking with you, but I can't always get to it in time. So anyway, I do want to thank you for being here today and attending our little webinar. So I have some credentials, I guess, that make me qualified to speak about the subject matter. And so here we are. I have a broker's license in several states, and I've been in real estate for well in excess of 40 years. And relevant to today's conversation, I've had some close calls. And so some really close calls that could have turned out to be incredible disasters. So that being said, I do teach continuing education for attorneys, and I am obviously on the right-hand side. I'm very heavy into risk management. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your safety today. So let me see. Can you see? Yes, you can see that screen. Okay, good. All right. So that being said, we're probably going to be talking about stuff that's going to appear to be legal. I am not a practicing attorney. My trial work is limited to testifying as an expert witness. Standard of care is my specialty, as is agents' duties of inspection and disclosure, and finally market conditions, at least in San Diego County, although I'm considered to be a resource in other parts of the country as well. So the market being what it is, I think that we're seeing no slowdown in our activity in the San Diego area, clearly. Okay, that being said, our conversation today is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of your broker, nor for that of your attorney. Please consult with them as appropriate. Okay, and so again, if I say anything that your broker would like to speak with me about, please give them my contact information. They probably already have it, and I am happy to help them in any way that I can. So that being said, I have a lot of resources for you today. I mean, I put quite a bit of research into this, so I wanted to make sure that this is a definitive work on the subject. And so our webinars are intended to be interactive. And so please utilize the Q&A button to ask questions or offer input. I do look forward to hearing from you. We used to be able to go hot mic with people, but then we stopped doing that because what ended up happening was, once they would mute themselves again, the Zoom program would just turn them back on indiscriminately, and so we'd have some very strange noises coming out of some of the places where people were. So that being said, today is Tuesday, the 7th of November, and we are going to talk this morning about open house safety. Okay, and again, our safety is our paramount concern. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about how to read a preliminary title report. Certainly, my banner class that you think I can't make something, a 2-hour talk about something very interesting. It's going to be very interesting. It always is, and you'll come away from that doing pretty well. I think in the future, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to start creating shorter webinars. 2 hours is a lot of time, and I've been doing this for a couple of years now, but I think we can probably capture some of the moments in a shorter period of time. So, for example, my how to read a preliminary title report, we have Schedule A, Schedule B. Schedule A is pretty brief, so we probably get most of the introductions out of the way on the Schedule A stuff. What is a title report? Things like that, and then the Schedule B probably on its own. And so we don't have to have 2 hours. We could probably break it down into an hour each. Open house safety, probably break it down into the before, the during, and the after, that kind of thing. So, and I think we're going to be leaning more towards podcasts, but we'll see. It's a decision that needs to be made by the San Diego Association of Realtors with my interaction with them. Okay, so obviously I do stuff other than just with the San Diego Association, and so if you're getting my newsletter, you know that because I have a lot of stuff included in that newsletter. So this Thursday coming up, we're going to have kind of a double whammy. We're going to talk about the top 10 risk avoidance techniques in your file, but then we're also going to talk about the top 6 disclosures that you need to have in your file. and they can be doozies, and they can be incredibly expensive if you make a mistake on those. So we'll be talking about that on Thursday morning and then in the afternoon. And so for our purposes right now, we're going to talk about member benefits. And so again, I want to thank you for joining us for our discussion of realtor open house safety. Okay. So Albert Einstein, and I looked this up, it was actually Albert Einstein who said this: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so sometimes we do, and I see I forgot my closed parens over here, so I'm constantly critiquing my own work. So sometimes we keep doing the things the way that we've always done them. And so this conversation has come up a couple of times in the last couple of days where, I had somebody call me on the phone and they say, oh my God, I'm being sued. And I go, oh, I'm so sorry, what's going on? And they said, well, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And I said, well, you've been doing it wrong for 30 years. And so those are kind of key things to keep in mind. You need to be constantly educating yourself. And I know today I'm preaching to the choir, to people that are here to be educated. So but I'm going to ask you that you could be expecting a different result. But if you've always done open houses a certain way, can I ask that you keep your mind open for something different? I'm going to give you some ideas, and nothing really earth-shattering. I'm just going to give you some suggestions on how to be productive at the same time as being safe. Okay, and that's the important part of all of what we're talking about. So likewise, real estate is a systems business, and I find that the most successful people in real estate are those that operate by a system. And in fact, the Department of Real Estate says if you have a system in place, then we'll look at your system, make sure your system's not flawed. And sometimes people don't necessarily follow your system, and so if they don't, then we're going to hold them accountable for that. But you had a system, and so supposedly the system is done right. And I create a lot of systems for brokers, and happy to help you with whatever it is that you've got going on as well. So real estate is a systems business. So create a system of safety. Let's put this another way. Real estate is a full contact sport. And I say that because it's one of those things where I've got to be constantly churning. I got to be constantly talking to people, and it's a contact issue. And so my face-to-face one-on-one time is probably the most productive time I'll ever have. As I start doing other things, the success ratio changes. So for example, I know that my telephone calls, I can reach more people faster, but my return on my investment is smaller. So for example, in my telephone calls, cold calling, I have to call 100 people to make the same one good contact that I make maybe at my open house. I still think to this day that open houses are the most productive thing that you can do. Joe Jelly used to say that if you're flat broke and out of money, just do open houses 7 days a week. And I found him to be right on a number of occasions. I know people that all they did is open houses, and they made quite a bit of money, but they had to be consistent about it. So that being said, being full contacts means that there are some inherent risks. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So open houses, what's the dilemma? And again, the dilemma is going to be, it can expose you to hostile environments. So you can be, and I'm not talking about heat or bugs or things like that, but you can get exposed to hostile situations. And so, but again, you have to be in front of people to succeed. I mean, that's just the way it works. So what are you going to do? So today we're going to focus on safety. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to use your head. I'm going to ask you to have, bring all of your senses to the table, and be prepared to use them. Your safety is important. The safety of the property is important. The safety of the occupants, occupants being not just the people in the property that have come, that live there, but also the people that are now joining you in the property. Their safety is going to be important. We're going to talk about all these elements. And then of course, the safety of your broker. We want to make sure your broker is safe, because as long as your broker is safe, that means you're probably going to be safe. And so we're going to be looking at those elements of safety on a number of different levels. So your license is important. And it's surprising what you can do to mess that up. And so we'll talk about that here. But let's talk about the 3 stages of open houses. And again, I break it down into 3. I break it down into the before, the during, and the after. And again, let's talk about the before. Grab a little drink of water here. So let's talk about the before. So confirm with your broker marketing pieces. So obviously you want to make sure your broker's aware that you're doing open houses, and you want your broker to be looking at the marketing pieces that you're doing to promote those open houses. We had an agent who had sent us a marketing piece, because we review everybody's marketing pieces before they go out. And so they sent us a marketing piece, and the marketing piece said on the flyer, said, get out of the neighborhood while you still can. Well, of course, instantly, we're having a panic attack. We contact the agent. We say, tell us what's going on here. And the agent says, well, they're building a water treatment plant next door to the community. And so the agent was sending out these marketing pieces to the community to let them know that now's a good time to sell, because I guess not everybody likes to live near a water treatment plant. I know Fairbanks Ranch has their own, right off of Santa Fe Road. So but anyway, so it was the way that it was phrased. It could very well have been blockbusting or panic selling, which are part of the prohibited actions that you have with your real estate license. The DRE looks very, very dimly on that. So we were able to change the marketing a little bit so that it was again compliant for one thing. But remember, in this case, it wasn't that there was a discriminatory intent, but it had a discriminatory effect, and those are 2 different things. And CAR has some really good literature on the subject of discriminatory intent versus discriminatory effect. You can see them in your listing agreements, things like that. Okay, so it's we want to be sure that we treat everyone equally, we treat everyone fairly, and we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. So check that your marketing pieces are compliant. Make sure they've got the DRE information on them that you have to have. Your license number, your affiliation with your company. The license number is a DRE requirement. The affiliation with your brokerage is a DRE and an NAR code of ethics requirement. And I'm sure your broker would like to know that you're doing that as well. We teach branding, branding yourself for your future business, but at the same time, the laws require that you make sure that you also are very clear about your association with a brokerage firm. Okay. All right. So an example of that are open house signs. So I remember that I got a call from a broker who said, and it was a significant brokerage, large brokerage, and he said, I just got a bill from the Department of Real Estate. It was for $10,000. And he said, what should I do? And I said, well, tell me what happened. He says, well, one of our agents was using open houses, that they bought at the hardware store. So all they said was, open house. It didn't have, the agent's information on it, none of their contact, none of their DRE information, no phone numbers, nothing identifying them as being an agent. They were just planting these signs all over the place. And so apparently another agent turned them in. And so obviously a rival agent turned them in for having marketing pieces that were not to DRE requirement. And so he said, what should I do? And I said, well, I'd probably send him a check, right? And he goes, well, why would I do that? Or why am I calling you? Well, you're calling me so that you don't have to spend more money. Because remember that the Department of Real Estate, if they fine you for something, and then you don't comply, then they investigate you and you get the bill for the cost of the investigation. That's something a lot of people aren't aware of. And so the $10,000 may be letting you off lightly. Just hiring an attorney, I get almost that as a retainer just to have a conversation with people. So needless to say, the broker did pay it and managed to dodge that. And then, of course, an edict went out to the entire company that said you need to make sure you're using DRE compliant signs in all of your open houses and things like that. So that's very, very important. So when we're talking about marketing pieces, whatever you're doing, when you do your social media, anytime that you advertise your service as a licensee in the state of California, whatever that is, open house this weekend, whatever that is, you must have your DRE number on that or one click away. That's on the DRE website. What they're looking for is that you either have your numbers, your affiliation with your brokerage, etc., on that ad or one click away, one page away from that. Okay, so you want to make sure all the marketing pieces that you are doing are compliant. All right. Okay. So that being said, doing open houses for other brokers. Let's talk about that because we get kind of into a problem area with that. So you're with the red people and you want to hold an open house that's listed by the blue people. So two completely different brokerage firms. So you show up with your red person regalia to the blue brokers listing, and you're doing that open house, and the customer coming into the house, and I'm specific about the use of the word customer versus client, right? So and so the customer coming into the house thinks that you're with the blue people because that's who has the sign in the yard and that's who's got the listing on the property. And so now there's some confusion as to agency and which agency you represent. So DRE has said that there are potential issues, and that's a nice way of saying the hammer, right? So undisclosed agency. Okay, so undisclosed agency is where somebody is in the property, believes that you are to be with one brokerage when in fact you are with another brokerage. And so the law requires that our representations with clients must be in writing. Okay, it's a statute of frauds issue. So we have to make sure that we make it very clear to the client, to the customer. I'm sorry, the customer. They're not a client until they have a written agreement with you. They're a customer until then. So the customer comes in, and so you have to do what? Well, you have to disclose the concept of agency. And so I remember having this conversation with the then commissioner of real estate, Wayne Bell, who happened to also be an attorney, and he made a really good point. We were talking about the agent at the open house, and he says, you know what? I think that you need to disclose the concept of agency again prior to committing conduct that constitutes agency. And so very clearly, your first disclosure of agency needs to be at the open house. And so it's a real simple form, and I think you use this as bragging rights. I think you use this to show your knowledge and your expertise in the business, and it's a disclosure. And so the customer comes into the property, and this tells them who the seller's agent is, what their duties are to the seller, and then the buyer's agent's duties to the buyer, and then both of them talk about their duties to both the buyer and the seller. Okay, and those are going to be different duties, all right? And so then the agent representing both the seller and the buyer, what we refer to as dual agency, because we know we have single agency when we take the listing, right? We don't know who the buyer's agent is going to be yet, so we know we're in single agency. And when we have a buyer representation agreement with someone, we know we're in single agency until such time as we write an offer. And if it turns out we're writing an offer on a listing that is also under the same brokerage firm, under the same broker, then we're going into dual agency. And in California, we get the buyer to consent up front to dual agency by signing the PRBS form, which is the possible representation of more than one seller or buyer. And so we get that permission up front so that in case we do end up in dual agency, we don't have to disclose it again. But that's one of the reasons why we require you to have that form signed prior to starting to do activities that constitute agency. And then finally, we've added, and we have this codified because in October of 18, we made the first major changes to the agency disclosure. And so what are those changes? Well, we changed the listing agent here to the seller's agent. We changed the selling agent here to the buyer's agent. So why? Because we wanted to write them in plain English. We wanted to write them in a way that people would understand them without a whole lot of confusion. And prior to this, when we called them the listing agent and the selling agent, the DRE knew we didn't understand it half the time, and so they would put it on the state exam, and they knew it was a gotcha on a couple of things. So just be aware of that. And then we added to it the seller and the buyer's responsibilities here. Okay, and so again, the law requires that we make this disclosure in writing, And one of the reasons behind that is to allow us to defend the fact that we actually made the disclosure. Okay, it's kind of like, when we read you your rights, the Miranda decision, when we read you your rights, it's very different than if we just repeat it from memory. I mean, you've all watched Dragnet and stuff like that. Maybe not all of you, now that I think about it, but the program, I mean, you have the right to remain silent, if you give up those rights, et cetera, right? So we probably, most of us, be able to say that, but essentially what was happening was the detainee, the one who had been detained, said, well, you missed a couple of things, and you had no way of proving that you hadn't, unless you read it to them off of the card. And that's why that's that symbol of carrying the card around, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's my agency disclosure. And so if you're not sure, so you're in the open house and you are with the red people, you would have this form filled out ahead of time, showing that you are with the red people, right? Even though you're holding a blue broker's house open. Does that make sense? So you need to do that. And Wayne Bell said, and again, he was the commissioner, right? He was also the head of enforcement for 20 years. So he's a very bright attorney. And his position, his take on this was that this should happen at the open house at a minimum. Is everybody good with that? I'm just proud of the fact that I remembered to pull it up on the screen. So let's go back. I wanted to make that little admonition there so that it was pretty clear. So again, DRE says you might have been deceiving them if you're with the red people and you're holding the blue people's house open. You might have been deceiving the customer coming in the door, and so you need to make sure you clear the air on that. Is that good? Okay. Again, if you have any questions, Q&A field, please type in your questions and we're good to go. Okay. So I also threw another example in there, kind of a pet peeve of mine, is it's like when your licensed TC is affiliated with another broker. So if you're using a transaction coordinator, I get it. They're a necessary part of some of our businesses, supposedly to relieve some of the tasks that we would otherwise be doing. But if your TC is licensed with a different brokerage firm, then they need to be making that agency disclosure as well. And that kind of throws people for a loop, because they're like, why would my TC have to do that? Because again, it's just like they're with the red people, you're with the blue people. And so they need to make that disclosure. It would have their company name on the disclosure, and they would sign it, and they would have the buyer or the seller sign it, whichever side that they were representing. Okay. All right. Okay. So enough said about that. All right. So put it in the MLS as an open house. I think you should, if you're going to have an open house, I think you should put it into the multiple listing service. And so I think you should utilize extensively the advertising remarks section of the MLS. And so I do want to bring that up because I want to show you what that looks like. And so I'm going to go up into here, and I'm going to go to SDAR's website. I'm gonna log in. I was just on this. I don't know why I shut it down, but I did. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to input a listing. Okay. So, again, don't try this at home. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that Paragon button. I'm going to go up here to listings. Can you see that? Yes, you can. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on new listing, adding a new listing. And then when I do that, it pops up this window with all of these are called containers. So listing facts is a container. And then the next one is what's the next one here is general. That's a container. These are containers. These individual things are fields. Okay. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to close all of them just so you can see it all on one page. And I'm going to go down here to the remarks section, and this is called advertising remarks. Now, we'll talk in a second about inputting it over here on the left-hand side as an open house as well. But here's my remarks section. Remember, this is the remarks and the supplemental remarks are kind of sacrosanct in that, no identifying information, no open house on Tuesday, no showings between 4 and 5, no references to anything except the property, the physical characteristics of the property, and the neighborhood. Okay, so But when I go down a little bit further and I see advertising remarks. Now, in advertising remarks, this is where it's kind of the Wild West. If I go over here to the question mark next to it, I get a pop-up field that refers to the rules number 12.5.1. Unfortunately, the 12.5.1 doesn't actually say what this says. So we need to update that. I should probably let them know. But essentially it says that, what you can do is you can put in here under the advertising remarks, you can put in here open house, Sunday, what do? We do 10 to 1 and 4 to 7. Those are my favorite times to do them, by the way, because nobody else is doing them, right? So so that, and then I can also put in please contact, and then in caps, official seller's agent, because remember we changed the name, for your private showing of this exclusive property. Okay, so of course I can spell, right? All right, so let's fix property. Well, properly, I guess they're going to want me to try, so that's not going to be correct. So property, there we go. Nope, that didn't work either. All right. Property, so with a Y, there you go. We're gonna play spell check right where we're sitting here. Okay, so 12 years of college down the tubes. So there it is. Okay, so now obviously I put other stuff in there as well. I would put in, for example, the seller's agent. I would put in, Kevin Burke. I would put in my phone number. I would put in my email address. Right? So you see what I'm saying? I can put in that personally identifiable information in the advertising remarks. And the purpose behind the advertising remarks is that when your listing goes up to the cloud tonight, after you put the listing in the MLS as an active listing, then it will actually be required that the third-party aggregators and the syndicators that are buying those listings for 2 cents a page, they must put this information right near the listing, somewhere close to the listing itself. And part of that was intended so that the agent that was buying an ad space next to your listing, where it said, contact me for information about this property. Well, they're not the official listing agent, they're not the official seller's agent. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to protect your business, which is what this listing is. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so this is a place in advertising remarks. This is a place where you're not going to go crazy, but and clearly don't put disparaging remarks about another broker, but you can put a lot of stuff in here, and it'll be completely acceptable. Okay, so again, if you want the rules and regulations, you can always call me, obviously, but up here where it says MLS documents, when I click on that and I go down here to rules and regulations forms, I see my rules, and where is it? My rules. Here it is right here, SDMLS rules and regulations, and this is December of 22. So this is less than a year old, and this is where those rules and regulations are. And I walked an agent through finding these today. So that's where you would want to go and look in the rules that you can do relative to my advertising remarks. Is everybody okay with that? I'm going to go ahead and log out of that part. I'm back over here again. I'm going to go over here where it says add edit open house on the left. I'm going to click on that button, and now that button is going to pop up another field that says to me, it's a partial save apparently. I'm going to do an open house. So let's say I'm going to do it on Saturday. I'm going to click on the plus sign in front of it. I can do a live stream. I can put a URL in there. I'm going to pick Saturday the 11th. You've got to click on a date, by the way. So click on the date, and then they want it. I want it from 10 a.m. right to 1 p.m. Okay, and so Pacific time, obviously, and come see this gorgeous home! Exclamation mark. Fix the gorgeous part of things, and look at that, they don't even have that right. I think we've got a lousy spell checker here. So probably going to spell. Oh, there I got it right. Okay. So come see this gorgeous home. Okay. And then refreshments, I've only got 3 characters. So either YES or NO or Y or N, whatever. And then I'm going to save this as an open house. And so I'm going to click on save. It's probably, oh, it's going to let me do that. Okay. I didn't think it would because I didn't have enough information in there yet. So no live stream, but here is the open house. I can always go back up here and I can edit it. I can click on the open house and then I can click on modify and change, what the open house is. Now, again, the open house is going to be different than the tour. And so over here on the left, add or edit the tour is if I'm going to have it on a broker's caravan, not open to the public. Okay. Everybody okay with that? All right, that's kind of my big rendition in the MLS of what you're going to do in there. Let's go back over here to my PowerPoint. And again, I would, the advertising remarks is going to be exclusively accessed by the seller's agent. So if you are not the seller's agent, you can send them, a text message or an email message or something for them to populate that into the advertising remarks, for them to put it into the open house field as well, if you're going to be holding the open house for someone other than your own listing. Okay. All right. Available to the seller's agent only. Let's take a look. And I jumped the gun. I went there already. Be certain to notify the seller occupant. And this is all, again, before. So be sure to notify the seller occupant to secure all valuables in anticipation of the open house. All right. And so one of the things that we always ask for is, did they sign a KLA form? If it's the seller themselves, did they sign the listing agreement? Did they offer, excuse me, did they authorize the lockbox? Because on the listing agreement, it actually explains to them some of the risks inherent in having a lockbox. But on the KLA form, which is the key safe lockbox addendum, that's the form that explains to them, to the possible tenant or someone other than the seller. Let's say that, because we've changed our language a little bit. Someone other than the seller, of the inherent risks of us doing an open house. That there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. What happens? Even having just a lockbox on the property creates some challenges. They're easy enough to break, through them, but I always used to say that for somebody to hack into one of our lock boxes, one of our central lock boxes, it would be easier for them to throw the lockbox through the window than it would be to try to break into it, because it's just almost impossible to be broken into. I've never heard of it happening. I have heard of people shackling, using bolt cutters to remove the shackle, but it doesn't give them access to the key inside the box. But you need them to be aware when other people are going to be in the home other than the occupant of the property, then we have some other challenges, some risks. And let's talk about some of those. So put away prescription, non-prescription medications. Take the temptation out of it. The bad guys, as we're going to call them, know that they just go straight up to the primary bedroom or bathroom. We used to call it the master bathroom, and they go right into the medicine cabinet, because that's why we call it a medicine cabinet, because that's where we keep the medicine. And so you'd be shocked at the things that they take out of that. Mostly opioids and things like that. They know what they're looking for. They're not on a treasure hunt, right? I guess they are, because they know what they're looking for. But even Channel 8 interviewed me outside of my house in Del Mar a couple of years back, and because we were having a rash of this, where people were going into open houses and they were stealing the things out of the house. And so, listen, I've never had to take that phone call, from our brokerage where, hey, stuff's missing from my house, but I do know other people have. And so the interviewer asked me, they said, well, what are they taking out of the medicine cabinet? And I said, well, they're not taking your cholesterol medication. I mean, they're taking the good stuff, the stuff that they can resell. That's kind of the point behind it. So prescription, non-prescription medications, weapons. I've been on caravans and seen loaded pistols on dresser tops, things like that, stuff that's in conspicuous places. I mean, it's kind of hard not to realize that it's a weapon. Personal photos. I've seen some photos that I don't think you could find on the internet, kind of stuff. And so, it just, for me, I just kind of like, that stuff needs to be put away. We don't need people to see that or people to, to take off with it. I mean, whatever. So Other personally identifiable sensitive information. I've seen bank account records out on top of desks. I've seen credit reports on desks. All of these are fair game for somebody to come in and just start taking pictures. So what do they have? They have your account information. They have your identity theft issues is what they have. So we want to make sure we're protecting the occupant of the property, the seller or the occupant, whoever that is. And so we want to make sure that they're putting those things away. And I just operate off a checklist and say, did you put these things away? Did you do all these things? Okay. Arrange to have a companion accompany you. And we'll talk about this again later, but arrange to have somebody there with you. Somebody who can identify an assailant. All right. And so, it just seems like that, anymore, a year doesn't go by that, we lose another real estate agent who was holding an open house innocently, sitting there essentially being a sitting duck, so to speak, and they end up disappearing. We had an individual a couple of years ago that was holding an open house in LA and Los Angeles, and then they found her stuffed in the trunk of her car in San Diego, and so obviously she had looked better. So really a sad situation. It's very upsetting for me personally because I've had some pretty close calls myself. So as an example, showing property. This goes back before cell phones, but I had a phone. Actually, it couldn't have been. I think we just weren't using the cell phones, but I get a phone call. I'm in the office late at night, and I get a phone, or not late at night. It was at dusk, and I get a phone call from my business partner at the time, and she says, I'm so excited. I just got a call from somebody who wants to go look at a property up on Del Court. And if you're familiar with Del Court, it's in Solana Beach. It's up at a T stop, and then it goes both ways, and it ends in cul-de-sacs on both ways, both directions. And so, there was a property up there. I was familiar with the property, and she says, I'm going to be showing it to this guy. He just called me. His name is Jimmy. And I said, well, where did he call you from? And how do you know him? And she says, well, he's calling me from the Arco station back when Arco was on the corner of Via de la Valle and Jimmy Durante, or Stevens, as it becomes Stevens Avenue. And so he was calling from a payphone. And so I said, okay, do you know the person that by any other thing? No, but I'm going to go ahead and show the property. I said, and I'm not comfortable with that because I was familiar with the house. It was vacant. It's dusk. It's on a end of a cul-de-sac. It's at a cul-de-sac. It's no one way in, one way out. Escape route is already made for you, that kind of thing. And so I picked her up and drove her to view the property. And I'll tell you something, the situation was very suspicious. The individual was driving an old 280 SE Mercedes. I recognized the type of vehicle and everything. Gets out of the car, rather a healthy looking individual. First words out of his mouth, I get out of the driver's side, she gets out of the passenger side. He turns to her and he says, who's that? And as in, what'd you bring him for? And so, my ears were up, things were not looking good. So he wanted to look at the property. And so now, of course, he's all agitated, and we get over to the front of the house, and then I had him go in first. And there's a method to this, and we're going to talk about how you show property for your own safety. And so I let him go in first, and then I wouldn't let her go in. She wanted to go in and show him the house. Again, vacant. There's nothing in it. Dark street. It's getting dark on a dark street. So he goes around, wanders around through the house. Obviously, he really wasn't looking inside the house. He was still angry about the fact that I was there. And so, he gets, we chat a little bit outside. He told us that, he had sold a plantation that he had owned in Virginia and made a lot of money. And now he was looking to invest it in a home in California. And he told us the story and all that kind of stuff. And so then he gets into gets in his car and he leaves. And so I didn't even bother setting up another appointment because this one was weird enough to begin with, right? So the next morning, we get a fax comes across. I was going to say the teletype. There's a fax comes across from the sheriff's department in our office on Via de la Valle, and it has a sketch of this individual identified as Jimmy, which is who this person is, driving a 280 SE Mercedes, and he was wanted for potential homicides, several of them in Virginia, and so I called the sheriff's department right away. And I said, we just showed a property to this guy last night. And so, you know, a series of questions later, and they said, if you hadn't have been there, your partner would be, we would probably find her chopped up someplace because we're still looking for this guy. And so obviously I gave them information that I had that made it, gave them more information than they had before. And so folks, I'm telling you, this is bad stuff. There are bad actors out there, and we need to make sure that we protect ourselves. And in my case, I protected my business partner at the time, and very clearly it would have had a very different outcome if I hadn't gone with her to show that. But see, we drop our anchors. You know, we drop our sense of using our head when, you know, somebody says, you know, I want to look at this $2 million house. Oh, good, I'm going to sell a $2 million house. See, how much commission is that? But we're not really thinking about, you know, what the safety issues are with that. And so that's my desire, is that you are thinking about that. My desire is that you take yourself out of your box, think about what you're doing. You're going someplace, you know, that's why we always say you never show a property to a client the first time that you meet them. You know, you want to meet them in the office, meet them in a public place, you know, things like that, so that, you know, you can at least, you know, identify them with other people can identify them as well. You know, for me, you know, the coffee shop on the corner of 15th Street and Camino del Mar, you know, I'm pretty well known there. I frequent it quite a bit. And when I'm in there, you know, if I'm with somebody, if I'm going to meet someone, I'm going to meet them there the first time, but never at the house. And even then, I want to make sure that people can identify who I was with. And so for me, fortunately, I'm pretty well known at that coffee shop. And so people would be able to identify, and I'll make a stink about it. I'll bring them up. Hey, let's get a cup of coffee. What's your name again? And then, you know, just make a whole great big thing about it, and make sure that those people are also memorable, so that that the individual that I'm introducing is also going to be memorable too. You know, it'll go both ways. Does that make sense? So I want to do that. Office environment, whatever, someplace where somebody can identify who the assailant was. Okay. All right. So preferably somebody over the age of 18. Okay, so YOA is year of age, but so someone over the age of 18. So, you know, an adult, sound mind body. You know, clearly not the 3-year-old. Okay, in fact, you could be endangering the 3-year-old. A lender is perfect. I really think that we should focus on having people that we want to do business with, that want to do business with us. We need to enlist their support. And so I really think that you should have a lender at your open house. And so if you're not going to have another real estate agent, now we've had it happen where, you know, we've had listings that were so popular that we hold an open house, and we have 7 or 8 agents from our company there. And essentially it was an open house class. We were teaching how to do open houses and do them safely. But 7 or 8, we all traded off, you know, you're number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And so as people came in, you know, obviously they had to be at least 18 years of age, capacity to contract, stuff like that. And we would just go through, and we never had a problem having enough people coming in to satisfy, you know, everybody got 2 or 3 good clients out of it. So, but if you're not going to do that, because sometimes I've had people say, well, I don't want to share my money with anybody. Well, you don't have any money if you're dead, but share my money, you know, so the lender, it may be a good backup for you. And so what I really like the lender for a lot of different reasons. They're the best at interviewing the customer. If you think about it for a second, you know, they're just there to do business, right? They're not like me. I'm Mr. Enjoy everybody, you know, have a good time. Let's chat, stuff like that. But the lender's really there to get information. And so invariably, when I'm done with my open house, however long it was, I'll go to the lender and I'll say, you know, so what information did you gather? And I'll get this sheet of, of names and phone numbers and email addresses and all that. I'm like, how did you do that? Well, I just asked them and started talking to them. They were ready to give me information, because a lot of times the lender's not as intimidating as we are. So anyway, they're the best at interviewing the customer and potentially disarming them. When I say disarm, I mean not take a weapon away from them, but you know, essentially, you know, breaking down the inhibitions and having them open up a little bit and talk to you about what it is exactly that they're looking for. Okay, so potentially disarming them. So Google the neighborhood, and I say this, and I've added a little bit to this, but when I say Google the neighborhood, I'm just using that as a term of, you know, look the neighborhood up. You know, not necessarily demographics, right? right? But look the neighborhood up. You really should be familiar with the places that you're marketing. And clearly, if it's your farm, you should be really familiar with the property. But Google it, find out what it is. What are my access points? I would look at it from a 30,000-foot view. I occasionally look at my properties, across the country that from the satellite. What are they seeing today? And it's like it's not usually the same day. It's usually like they're there for a couple of months or whatever before they refresh them. But look at it from the satellite. And why? Because I'm trying to determine escape routes, and here's why. So check out the neighborhood. Go to the neighborhood, right? Drive the neighborhood. All right. So prepare an escape route. And so that escape route could be from a lot of different things. It's not just from the perp, right? It's also from, fires. For example, you're in Scripps Ranch and you're holding an open house and you're in the middle of fire season and Santa Ana's are blowing and all that kind of stuff. And do you have a way? Do you know what direction to go? Or are you going to end up essentially in a box canyon in Scripps Ranch and not be able to escape the neighborhood? Okay. And so having known people that have been stuck in situations like that, the police show up, get out, now's the time to go. The fires are here, that kind of thing. So you need to know what your escape plan is. And that's just true for anything that you do. So prepare an escape route, again, from the house itself, from the neighborhood itself. And so again, my 30,000-foot view looking down, I can probably get a pretty good picture of the easiest way to get out, which way the winds are coming. So again, I want you to be thinking, thinking about your own safety, thinking about clearly your own safety and maybe safety of those people that are there with you at the time. Okay. Make sure that you have a reliable cell phone, and make sure that it has signal strength, that it's fully charged. Those are all kind of really obvious things, but you want to make sure, right? Because and from the home itself, right? So you want to go to the home and then see if your phone's got 5 bars or is it like no bars. And clearly, I talked to my sister. I used to talk to her fairly frequently on the phone, and invariably we'd talk for a short bit, and then there would be silence. And I go, okay, here we go again. And so she called me back about 3 hours later and say, oh, my battery died. And I'm going again. And so, this woman just never charged the battery on her phone until it died. And so she could go a day or two and then it would just die. I mean, I don't know. I plug mine in. Mine's plugged in now. I mean, but if I plug it in when I go to bed, get a charge overnight, whatever. But, I think you should be charging your phone. I think you should be counting on it to be charged. And when you go to your open house, again, don't go there with the plan of charging it because you might not have electricity. I've been to open houses that didn't have the juice on, right? So keep it in your possession at all times. That's important as well. Okay, so you need to have it with you. And if your instincts tell you that something is wrong, I'm telling you to trust your instincts. Okay, and so I'll turn to Linda, and if Linda says something's just not right, and I didn't catch it, I'm usually pretty good. But if I didn't catch it, I'm going to trust that she knows what she's talking about, or maybe she sees or feels something different than I do. Okay, so trust your instincts. If something doesn't appear right, then check it out. Okay, carry on a conversation when you're showing the property, and this is something I know a lot of people don't think this is very popular, but listen, I think I have a whole article for you on how to make your open house productive, the downtime supposedly when there's nobody at the open house, and so I think you should be on your phone. I think you should be calling people. I think you should be, going through your rotary list. What do you call that? The Rolodex. I know you probably don't know what a Rolodex is, but go through the Rolodex and start calling people and just, doing the Brian Buffini pop by. Just say, hey, you know what? I'm doing what I always love. I'm holding an open house today. I'm doing real estate. I love my career. It's so much fun. And I was just, I had a couple minutes. I just thought I'd check in with you. Of course, at the opportune time. Oh, wait, somebody's coming in. I'll have to get back to you later. But the idea being that you don't want a really long conversation. You want many conversations, and so give them the address, invite them to the open house.
come on by if you have a minute, just stop by to say hi. I'm here until 1. I'm back at 4 to 7, that kind of thing. And so I think that you carry on a conversation when you're showing the property. So when somebody comes in, I've got the phone, I've been talking to people on the phone, and somebody comes in and I say, oh, hi, how are you? And then I say to the person on the phone, I have somebody here at the open house. And so hang on just 1 second. I don't hang up on them. I don't disconnect the call. Hang on just 1 second. So I take the phone away from my ear because, again, I'll have it in my left hand because you shake your hand, shake the right hand. But I'm going to have it, but I'm going to leave the phone on so that they can hear the conversation. Probably even better if it's a duo call, one of those video calls. All right. So carry on the conversation. So the person standing in front of you knows that someone is listening in on their conversation with you. Okay, that's kind of an important part of all this is I want them to know there's somebody else listening, somebody else watching, that kind of thing. And aren't these duo calls great? I mean, I can do a video call and all that kind of stuff. So now they don't know whether or not, and if they're looking for an opportunity, they may decide you're not the one because you've obviously got some other things going on that are going to make it difficult for them to get away with it. So again, use your discretion when you're doing this, but I would not hang up on the call. I would keep the call active and then work with the person and talk with them for a little bit of a while and maybe in your conversation give some hints as to the clothing they're wearing or physical features or things like that, and so that again, if something happens to you, assuming you're alone at the open house, which I just think is nuts, right? And so and I always get into a fight about this. I always have the agent, oh no, I don't want to, I don't want to share it with anybody. Well, then don't be inside the house, be outside the house, right? And so we'll talk about that. So did you notify somebody that you were going to be at the open house? And so how about the neighbors? See, I think you should be knocking the doors in the neighborhood. I think you should be going through the neighborhood, inviting people to the open house, but especially the ones on the corners where you're going to be where you would like to put your sign, because I think you should be asking permission to put your sign in somebody else's yard. And I always have the realtors that tell me that, there's an easement. It's not your easement. It's the city's easement, right? And so arguably the city has the right to put a sign. The city also has the right to take it away. I had that experience in Del Mar where I had an open house sign planted in the front of the yard, clearly in the yard. City of Del Mar code enforcement comes by and good people, they're just doing their job. And they come by and say, you've got it's in the city right away. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, it's like 12 feet back from the street. And they said, yeah, but that's still the city right away. I go, seriously? And they go, yeah. I said, well, how far does the city right of way extend on this property? And this is on 9th Street, right? So it's a through street. And they said, well, it goes all the way essentially to the mailbox, which is on the door, right, of the house. And so I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, okay, so wanting to be compliant and respect the law and all those kinds of things, I took the sign out of the yard and I opened up the sunroof of my car and I put it in the sunroof and there's the sign. There's nothing in there about having a sign on your car. And so there it is, open house, that kind of thing. So they did take them down out of the corner points and stuff like that, but that's just, something you have to deal with. So what about your office? Does somebody at the office know that you're holding an open house? Where is the open house? When are you going to be there? Did you prearrange a calling time? And this is kind of an important concept. So did you prearrange a calling time? Hourly, probably, right? That if you don't communicate at a predetermined time, obviously you wouldn't tell the bad guy, I got to call them at 2:00 so they know I'm okay. You wouldn't want to do that, right? But if you don't communicate at a predetermined time, then they will contact the authorities, right? Not you, because you may not have the ability to do that. You may be in a situation where you can't use your phone to contact the authorities. But if you have somebody out there who's watching out for you, and if they don't hear from you, they need to call the authorities. Say, we had a predetermined calling time. I haven't heard from them. It's been 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And so can you send somebody by to do what we refer to as a wellness check? So they'll come by and they will do a wellness check. They will look to make sure that you're okay. All right. Now, we don't want to be using this as a, an everyday thing, but that's what they do. I had somebody call on me on a wellness check. I had headed back to my house late at night, about 10 o'clock at night, and I unfortunately I passed by the office and I just can't resist. I went into the office, and in the office I started working on stuff, completely lost track of time. About 1:30 in the morning, I go, oh my God, it's 1:30 in the morning. I need to go home. And so I got out, drove to my house. It was a couple blocks away, and I have 6 units out in front of my house waiting for me to come home. And so hi guys. And so anyway, it was just so the individual had called in and said I hadn't heard from Kevin. He had left, at a certain time, and I hadn't heard that he made it okay. Would you mind just stopping by and doing a wellness check? And so, and that's what we hire law enforcement to do. And so, and it was not, I knew all of the guys and the one gal that were there. And so, it was a good conversation at 1:30 in the morning, and certainly graveyard shift, right? So different time period for them. So anyway, somebody else that will contact authorities. And so again, at my open house, if I don't make contact with that person, you should set the timer on your phone, right, to go off every hour, and then make the call. But again, if you don't make the call, then they can try to call you. But then if you take the call, then maybe you have a code word or something like sunset or something like that. That if you say that code word, it means I can't talk. I've got, I'm in a bad situation here. And so then they would know to contact authorities. Hopefully that helps. Okay. All right. Set the reminder on your phone so that you don't forget. Because if you forget, then all of a sudden you've got friends that you didn't have before. And we want to make sure we're not inconveniencing people. So, it's not, you don't want it to be an emergency. Okay. So did you knock the neighborhood earlier? That's my point is, did you invite the neighbors to the open house? And again, were you memorable? Would people be able to identify you later? Okay. Hopefully not at the morgue, right? But will people be able to identify you, that you were having your open house on Sunday, 10 to 1, 4 to 7, something like that, so that they would be able to look out for you? Were you safe on social media? And so I tell you, I see things on social media, and some of it just, like I don't do a lot of the social media out there. I do LinkedIn, business stuff. But when somebody sends me a message and says, your granddaughter is cute, what's her name? It's like, okay, we're starting to go down the wrong path here, and so I'm probably going to cut that off. Are you safe on social media? And so when you post your open house on social media, again, remember what I said in the beginning, you've got to have your DRE number on that page or less than one click away to be able to get to that information, because you're advertising your services. And then there's other things like, if you are currently listed with another broker, this is not intended as a solicitation of that listing. Those are important things to say. Okay. So did you advertise the property? What the pictures that you took, does it show that the property's vacant? That's dangerous, right? First of all, because now you're going to be at this open house that's vacant, and the bad guys may be thinking, what a great opportunity we're going to have, right? Because we're opportunists. And a vacant property, you don't want to advertise the property as being vacant. It's also a violation of our MLS rules. So, you've got a box that you check, but you may not put vacancy in the remarks or the supplemental remarks section, because it invites vandalism, it invites people moving into the home. And again, if you're holding an open house on a vacant open house, and I always said, Linda always laughs at me when I say, you need to make it look like a parade, right? So, if everybody's chasing you down the street, turn around and make it look like you're the leader, that kind of thing. So the vacancy of the property, if you're going to have a vacant property with no furniture in it, then I probably would be judicious about those interior photos, maybe the kitchen in such a way that you can't see that there's no tables or anything, right? That kind of thing. But vacancy of the property creates its own problems. And so you want to make sure that you're not advertising that. Will it look like a gathering of people? Will it look like you're going to have a whole bunch of people there? Or even if you're in that picture, that you're with somebody or 2 or 3 others who are also going to be there at that open house, right? So that so that people aren't under the impression that this is this one person's at the open house, on their own, unprotected, because we don't allow you to have weapons in California, because we'll get into that on another one. But anyway, will you make it look like a gathering, like there's a lot of people going to be there, or that you're going to be alone at the house? That's dangerous, right? And so I don't want you advertising yourself as being alone at the property. Come by and see me. Okay, all right. Did you ask the neighbors for their permission to place your open house signs? And as I said earlier, you don't have a right to put a sign in somebody's yard. Okay, so I always felt like it was a great idea to go up and knock on the door and just say, "Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm your friendly neighborhood realtor guy, and I'm going to be doing open house down the street here at 546 Lawrence Lane. And would you mind terribly if I put an open house sign in the yard? I'm expecting a bit of traffic, but I promise that when I put it, I won't go through your sprinklers or things like that. Would that be okay with you?" And so I always ask it so that it's kind of like a rhetorical question, but I've never been refused. I don't know if I'm just charming or what, but did you ask for permission to do that? Some people they just kind of take it for granted that they're entitled to do that. I've lost my screen. Where'd my screen go? Okay, let's see here. There, is that it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, good. So did you ask the neighbors for their permission? And so, I want to be able to say yes. I had a call from an owner of a property who was very angry. Apparently, an agent had, everybody identifies me as being everybody's broker, but an agent had just showed up. They're out there gardening, and the agent shows up, just plants the sign in the yard, and so the owner took offense at that because they were sitting right there. He could have said, "Do you mind if I put my sign in your yard?" And so an altercation occurred, and the individual doing the gardening happened to be a real estate agent, and so called me on the phone and said, "Hey, this you're one of your agents." It wasn't, but all right. Just planted the sign in the yard, and here's how that went, and it went really poorly. And there's no complaint other than I wanted you to know I employ people too, and I wanted you to know that that's what your agent did. They were rude to myself and my wife, and and it's like, okay, I get it. So be nice to people, will you please? I mean, that's kind of the general idea. Ask for permission. I would go knock on the door. And if you look at my open house success video, which is also on the YouTube website, you'll see I've got all kinds of ideas for you. Go back after the open house is over with, take the sign out, brush it off, then put it in your car, go up, knock on the door again. And I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to hold my house open, and give them a thank you card. Have some thank you cards that you've written at your open house, with your business card inside. I used to tell you, give them a $5 coffee card, but then another trainer came to me and said, "Why are you doing that? Give them a lottery ticket. Give them five. I mean, whatever. Will you remember me when you win? That kind of thing." So I thought that was a great idea. So give them a lottery ticket. Give them something that at least they have something they could win. Okay. So anyway, so get permission. Make sure that it's clear what you're trying to do. Tell them when the open house is going to be over. You'll get the sign out of there. You'll make sure you clean up, tidy up a little mess again. It's like you're golfing. You're cleaning up a divot or something like that. Okay. All right. Okay. Did you invite them to the open house? I think you really should invite them to the open house. And so, are they going to say no? Probably, but you at least extended the invitation. The thought was there, and hopefully that means a good thing for you. Okay. All right. Did you ask them to keep a lookout for you? So in other words, if I start screaming at the top of my lungs, will you come running? Right? You don't have to be that flamboyant about it, but if you see something suspicious, at the house, then would you mind, just checking on me, making sure that I'm okay? All right, that's all. We're friends, right? That kind of thing. I mean, I was nice about it. You're nice about it. It's all good. Were you memorable? And I really kind of like that. That was a saying told me by a guy by the name of Boy Tay. He ended up being, he was the director of education, the national director of education. Really a neat guy. I've run into him a couple of times in my career, and he said to me, he says, "You always want to be memorable." And so I just thought, wow, that really kind of resonated with me. And I kind of think sometimes I am. So that being said, let's talk about the during. So we talked about the before. That's the biggest part of it. Then we have the during. So leave all valuables locked in the trunk of your car. Purses, please. You're not at the ball. You're putting on a show, but jewelry, keys, obviously not the car keys, don't leave the car keys locked in the car, but anything that's valuable, something that would tempt somebody, your jewelry, whatever, tempt somebody to commit a crime, kind of get away with it kind of thing. It's always an opportunity crime, right? So leave those things locked inside the car, and then take your car keys with you. Leave your keys in your pocket, someplace where you can get to it. I wouldn't be leaving your purse out on the countertop. There's no reason for that. Business cards, yes. Be alert for signals as you enter the house. And I reshuffled this part of the presentation because I found that it was not really in the best of places. I want you to check all the doors and windows, and this is as you're getting to the house. Okay, check all the doors and windows as you arrive. Do the same thing as you leave, by the way, obviously with the reverse intent. But if you're going through the house and something's not right, you need to be thinking, you need to be using your head. So consider a potential escape route. So if you get to the house, what do? You get to the house, you go and you put the key in the door, and the door opens without you even unlocking it. Okay, that should be a heads up that maybe somebody left the door unlocked, right? There could be a million reasons why. Okay, but I'm right away, I'm thinking they're waiting inside. It's kind of like, you remember the old Superman movies, Superman comes rushing through the door and you're like, look out, Superman, the bad guy's behind the door, he's going to hit you, knock you out. And that's what he does. Although he's Superman, I don't know how they knocked him out unless they hit him with a kryptonite hammer or something like that. But anyway, so you want to make sure that if something's not right, you're thinking. And you want to make sure that, again, you've planned your escape route. So consider a potential escape route. So when I'm holding my open house, if I'm alone at the house, which again, I don't recommend, I'm going to probably not be inside the house, by the way. I'm probably going to be outside the house. We'll talk about that in a second. But, I need to know I can get out of the house. And so, again, as I've said before, bad guys travel in pairs. So, I got the one coming in the front, the other one coming in the back, and I'm just stuck. So, I don't want that to happen. Okay. And I don't care who you are. All right. Male, female, it doesn't matter. All right. Turn on all of the lights. Again, yes, even the oven light. I think every light in the house should be on. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that that's okay with the people that are there. But why? Because you don't want a dimly lit house. You want to be able to identify people. You want it to look like Christmas in July, right? You want it to look like, there's activity going on there. So even the oven light, the refrigerator light, stuff like that. Remember that MLS rules require that you keep the key in your possession at all times. So not in the door lock. So it used to be, this is kind of the way we used to do business, was we would take the key out of the lockbox, we'd go to the front door, we would unlock the front door, and then we would leave the key in the front door. Why? Because we didn't want to lose the key, right? Well, think about it for a second. You left the key in the front door, and then afterward, you go to lock the house up and you go, where did I leave that key? Oh, that's right, I'll leave it in the front door. And you go to the front door and it's not there, right? Well, because somebody took the key and they're now going someplace where they're going to come back after you've gone home. I mean, how long can you stay there and wait? So you've created a real situation for yourself. So across the country now, our MLS rules require that you keep the key in your possession. So not on the countertop, in your possession. Okay, all right. Now I'm saying that, and I know that there are going to be people that are going to call me up and they're going to say, oh, I can't believe it. I had the key. I left it in the door. It's the way we always used to do things. Well, it's just not the right way to do it. Okay. All right. So not on the countertop. Do not sit inside the house. I don't think that that's the safest place to be. Plus, outside is where the decision is made to come inside. So, the outside of the home is where you want to get a hold of these people if you want to be successful in your open house. Excuse me. At the same time, you want to be safe in your open house. And so if you are outside, and that's what I do, I'm outside, I greet them before they come in, that kind of thing. I get a chance to size the situation up and decide, the safety issues and things like that. But they make the decision outside. And so I want to make that decision too. I want to make the decision whether or not I want to be inside the house with them or not. Okay. It's safer for you. All right. Probably best to greet people outside as they arrive. Waiting for them inside the house, you're kind of a sitting duck, right? But invariably, 99.9% of the time when I'm wandering around, I like going into open houses. I go into the open house and there's the agent doing 15 things to Sunday, and inside the house, sitting at the table. I mean, I can tell you right away, watching TV. I had one watching this football games. I've walked in on them sleeping on the couch, that kind of thing. So, I think inside the house is not the place to be. I think outside the house is where you need to be. And I know for a lot of us, it's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit outside. Well, my question for you is, how much money do you want to make this year? Sitting inside the house, they're out, they drive up on the outside and they're trying to figure out whether or not they want to come inside, right? And you're sitting on the inside and you don't have a chance to influence that decision. So I like sitting out there. I like making eye contact. I like, come on in. It's okay. Right. It's what I'm here for, is to show you the house. Right. They're afraid they're going to buy something they don't want. And I always tell them, can you judge a book by its cover? Well, come on in. Let's take a look at the inside and see if the cover does it justice, that kind of thing. Okay. So I think waiting inside the house is a scary thing for us. It really is. When you're in the house, whether you're there or with other people, so you want to direct the customer. And again, I use the word customer intentionally. So they're a customer until they sign a written agreement with you, and then they become a client. Okay, so you want to direct the customer. You don't want to lead them. And this is the hard part for some of us. We like to go through the house and this is the bathroom. Well, I can see it's the bathroom. You don't put a toilet in the bedroom, that kind of thing. So, but we have that thing where we want to show the house off. We want to look like we know what we're talking about, that kind of thing. That's not what they want, right? And plus it's not safe, because as you're going through the house, you're getting deeper and deeper into the house and deeper into the danger zone, right? So direct them rather than leading them. Okay. Limit the number of visitors inside the property at a time. I think that's another way to do this to be safe. Okay. Consider staggering them. Get yourself a little sign that goes on the front door of the house. Lock the door after, you've got one in or two in or whatever. Lock the door and then a sign on the house that says, please excuse, we'll be back in a few minutes. We're showing the property to some prospective buyers. Okay. That kind of thing. All right. So you're selling the sizzle, you're creating the anticipation, that kind of thing. But I would say consider staggering the visitors. So we had a guy who would do, he was up in Temecula. And he would put out 500 signs. And I told him, I said, where are you putting 500 signs? And he says, all over the place. It looked like I owned the place, right? And so, he's not putting 500 signs in the same yard. He's putting them on all the corners. He's bringing them in from the major routes. And I said, well, you bringing them up from the Interstate 8? I mean, that's a lot of open house signs. And he said, well, I know, but I get a lot of traffic. And he really did. He had anywhere between 10 and 20 real estate agents with him at a time. And they would just share customers, and then he would take a referral fee from each one of them. So, if they sold a house to anybody they met, he'd have the log of who was there. And if they bought a property, then the agent would end up, paying him a referral fee. So consider staggering the visitors. But remember, for every sign you put out, you get usually one customer. So 10 signs, 10 customers, 500 signs. Can you imagine the traffic at that house? Okay. All right. Lock the door behind each entrant. I suggested that a minute ago. Probably not a good idea. Let's talk about alcohol for a second. And so, it's no secret that, people do drink alcohol. Not all do, but some drink alcohol. So probably not a good idea to serve it at the open house. And so let's talk about this for a second. In fact, I did not pull up. Did I pull up the? Where did it go? Let me find it in here for you. I do have the alcohol at the open house. Is it in here? By the way, I will send all this to you. If you want this, I will send this to you. But I do have, I did a lot of research, obviously, on this, but about serving alcohol at the open house. Where did it go? Isn't that funny? Maybe it's in the main, up here on the main header. Well, what did I do with it? So I have alcohol at the open house, and I don't see it in my thing here. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Quick guide. Okay, there it is. I knew I had it. Okay, so here's our quick guide. So this is serving alcohol at the open house. Now I'm going to summarize it for you in a second here. But again, all this stuff, I'll send you all this stuff. Do I need my broker's approval to serve alcohol in a setting like an open house? And the answer is yes. right? I mean, because your broker is your employer, and they have a right to either approve or disapprove of it at the open house. I ran the Del Mar Caravan for 17 years, and it was common knowledge that you would not discuss alcohol when you got there. We never talked about that because we have liability for that, and so we do. As an entity that is sponsoring your open house, we have potential liability for that. And so people would come in and they knew me, and they knew that, I had this little thing about that. And so they would come up with all, adult beverages or, enhanced drinks, things like that. They come up with all kinds of stuff, but they weren't allowed to use the word alcohol. So brokers required to exercise reasonable supervision over the activities. And why is this an issue? So in California, is an ABC license required. So an ABC license is alcoholic beverage and control. Okay. And so the caterer, if you're going to have an open house open to the public, now this is important, open to the public, then yes, you have to have, and the caterer needs to have a Type 58 catering permit also issued by the ABC. Now, I know this from personal experience. I was the chairman of the board for the Chamber of Commerce in Del Mar for several years, and I used to have to drive all the way out to Vista to ABC and get permits whenever we would have a charity event. We would, for example, one year we had our wine tasting at the plaza where we were out on the deck. So we had a whole portion of the deck blocked off for us. We had to. The law said that they wanted us to have it controlled. The service, I had to go out and get a permit to serve the alcohol. And we had the wineries. We had arranged with the wineries to come to send people out to distribute their own wine. So we had the bartenders built right in. We didn't have realtors doing it. We had the bartender from the winery who was serving the wine. Who better to know the quality of the wine and what to do with it and all that. So that's how we handled it. And it went well. We never had an issue, never had any problems. What preventative steps may be taken to limit liability? Making sure no minors are present. I would do the catering service. Instruct servers to require ID, servers to identify if guests are intoxicated. So most of them, the caterers, will have training to tell, because you'll have people show up at your event that have already been drinking, and then they show up at your event, and now you're adding to it, and of course you'll be the nail in the coffin, or the next accident they have will be attributed to you. So drink limits, I know every event with California Association of Realtors that I go to, they give me 2 drink tickets, which I give away, but probably shouldn't do that, right? Because maybe somebody's collecting more than 2 and got 4 now. But can you serve it without a license? And the answer is, as a private party, maybe. Again, broker has to approve it, but there can be no sale. And so it may not be open to the general public, and it may not be maintained for the purposes of keeping, serving, consuming, or disposing of alcoholic beverages, so not a bar, right? But so there are going to be some limitations on that. And so for the private party exception, have you reduced the risk? And so I'm going to take us back to, oh shoot, I've done this whole thing and I did not have it open. So let's take a look. There it is. Okay, my apologies. I do that from time to time. That's why I have the other computer there. So this is it, serving alcohol at an open house. I'm more than happy to send this to you and just make it easy on you. So let me get us back over to our presentation. So probably not a good idea to serve it at an open house. Remember host liability. We talked about that. Host liability. If it's open to the public, you may be required to have an ABC permit. And again, it's going to depend on whether it's just realtors or whether it's the general public. And again, that's Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. If it's for realtors only, best to have it catered for a group that knows when to cut it off, right? Call everybody that you know. So short little thing about the alcohol, but it's a very serious issue. Call everybody that you know, invite them to your open house. Again, probably not alcohol related. All right. Remember your sphere of influence. So, you have that SOI that we talk about. Get them on the phone. Start calling people. Listen, the last thing you need to be doing at your open house is sitting on your duff. You need to be up working, doing things. I mean, you've taken the time to be there. And this is the problem I have, is that agents will hold an open house and they'll advertise it from 1 to 4. They'll show up in my office at 1:15 looking for their signs. And then they're back in the office at 3:45. Aren't you done a little bit early? Yeah, nobody was coming through. I saw a break in the traffic, and so I thought I'd give it up. Well, can you really tell me that you should be making $1 million a year working 2 hours? Because that's essentially what you just did. You worked for 2 hours, not the 3 you said you were going to work. And you sabotaged your own open house because you really didn't want to do it in the first place. Well, I want you to be successful at your open house, but again, I want you to be safe at your open house. Now's a good time to catch up with your people. Okay, you got people you can call, people you can talk to. I think you should create a media event, which means all the fanfare, get the TV crews there, do all that stuff. I just don't want you to be the event. So I don't want you to be the media event. Body found, that kind of thing. We don't want that. Okay, bad news. All right, so treat everybody the same. And again, we're talking about the during, but treat everybody the same. So for potential fair housing issues, for sure, for professional business practices, okay, you should be treating everybody the same, everybody alike. Have all the attendees sign the property visit and open house advisory. I think that's really important. That's the CAR form PVOH. And so let me pull that one up for you here. And that's going to be my next form, this one right here. I really like this form. Remember, you all probably remember the PED forms that we went through when we were doing the COVID stuff. Well, this is the property visit and open house advisory. This is one of those forms that I chalk it off to what took us so long to do this, right? So, telling people there are recording devices everywhere. I mean, you go into, Linda is still learning about the stuff I have set up in her house, where she can talk to me through an intercom system, from completely the opposite end of the house. So yeah, they're recording devices. And so, you always tell the person, let's not discuss strategies or what you're willing to offer or anything like that, because they're going to be recording devices. And that's what this says. And they're both inside and outside of the property. I'm not allowed to have video recording devices inside the property. So, but I can assure you, you can't get within a half a mile of her house and she not know you're coming. So, but be aware that there are recording devices. So I like giving this to the potential person that walks in the property. Visitor safety, you're aware that, to be watchful and things like that. We used to give them booties, but then we found out that they were slipping on the floors and causing other problems. So, but we want to tell them that they may not have adequate traction. Animals or pets, and I'm going to differentiate between the animals that are already at the property that should not be at the property, right? So the animals that are already at the property should be secured or should be put someplace, or owner takes them for a walk or does whatever. But you should always, animals are unpredictable. Anytime I take a listing on a property, I always put in the listing, dog will bite. I mean, if they have dogs, right? So I put in dog will bite because all dogs bite. I mean, they just do. And they can't explain why. It can be the most friendly dog ever, and I may just set it off. I mean, you just don't know. They can be very, very unpredictable. So I always tell people, there's animals here. There could be allergic conditions for you. There could be, clearly unpredictable behavior. And then they got the kids running around and somebody grabs the dog and starts choking it. And we're going to have a situation. Okay. So that's the animals that are at the property. Then what about the animals that you bring? I mean, are they going to interact with animals that are at the property? And so there's something crazy about animals that are on a leash. They seem to be more aggressive. It's kind of like, hold me back, right? Than they are when they're not on a leash. And yet our law requires that they be on a leash. And I kind of agree with that. So be aware, do not let people bring. Now, again, if it's a service animal, that's not an animal. A service animal is not a pet. It is an extension of the person. So you want to make sure that you don't treat it as a pet. I mean, very clearly, if they're there to the open house to check out the open house, then they may require the services of a service animal. Okay. Accompanying minors, every single time, it just always happens. 5, the family walks in and the 5 go to the 4 corners, right? They're just off to the races. And I always advise the owner that, or the prospective owner, the viewer, that you need to keep the kids under control, right? Because, this is what we do. They've got to be accompanied. But again, sometimes the bad guys have trained them to go take things and they're less conspicuous about it than maybe the adults would be, right? Risk of injury, upon entering any property, the visitor acknowledges the, assumption of risk, we call it in the legal field, that things can happen in the property itself. Okay, so again, notice that the only people that sign this are the visitor. We put this in all of our listings so that people are aware. Please have the buyer sign the PVOH form prior to them viewing the property. Okay, so and I'm just thinking right now, I was talking to one of Linda's agents earlier today, and she does not have this form in there, and I have to make sure she puts that in there. Okay, all right. So let's take a look. Go back to my PowerPoint. So always ask the question. Now, this is important. Do you have a buyer representation agreement with another buyer? Now, based on the Burnett decision that happened last week or two ago, where everybody's in a tizzy now about that buyer representation, about, were we clear with the owners, the sellers of the property that, we were paying commissions to the cooperating broker and all this kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, and I personally think that they're definitely going to appeal it. They've already said they're going to appeal it. And so copycat lawsuits right away, all that kind of stuff. And so CAR in a meeting I was in with them a week or so ago said, if we have to make the buyer representation agreement legislatively required, we can do it fairly quickly. In other states where I have a broker's license, so for example, in Virginia, they made it a law on July 1st of last year that you had to have a buyer representation agreement with a buyer. Otherwise, you weren't entitled to be paid, and you were giving legal advice. And so if you've been resistant to this all this time, and I've been teaching this for 25 years, if you've been resistant to it, you need to get really good at it, because it's coming. It's going to be coming to you fast. There are all of a sudden, I'm seeing all these places springing up, offering to teach the classes. The Department of Real Estate has approved my class on the buyer representation agreement for continuing education credit, for 3 hours of continuing education credit. So I will be teaching it across the state of California, and as well as the RPA, which I've got for 5 hours of continuing education credit. I'll be teaching those classes. If you want me to teach it at SDAR, you're gonna have to send them an email and tell them that you want me to teach it at SDAR. So anyway, so the law says you have to ask the question, why? The NAR Code of Ethics, and this is a quote now. Do you have a buyer representation agreement with another broker? NAR Code of Ethics and the California Department of Real Estate require me to ask, okay? And why? Because if you try to work with someone who has an agreement already with someone else, then you could be guilty of a tort. Okay, that's an illegal thing, right? Which is interference with contract. So you don't want to do that. So always ask the question: do you have a buyer representation agreement with another broker? And so, and chances are in Southern California, at least, that chances are probably no. What's that? Which gives you an opportunity to explain what it is. At the same time, if you don't ask the question and it's somebody that I have an agreement with, I'm going to be very unhappy with that. I think you're interfering with that contract that I have with that buyer. And so you need to ask the question. It's really important. But again, as I said a second ago, what's that? Okay, so what's that? Well, that's an agreement that we have, and you get a chance to explain what it is. So get good at it, because it's here, right? And I think you should have one available. So, what does that look like? So I'm going to pull up the buyer representation agreement. Let's get rid of the PVOH. We'll get rid of the alcohol. I already showed you agency, so we'll get rid of that. Here's my buyer representation agreement. So it always starts off with the agency disclosure. By the way, we have voted to add the realtor acknowledgement form to the mini templates that we've created for everybody. So you'll see that showing up here fairly soon. So here's the buyer representation agreement. And so Wayne Bell even said, he said, you should have this open, available available for you at the open house. So we fill ours in for the most part, what information we're going to have. We don't know the buyer's name yet, but we're going to be asking them to sign one, and before we're going to show them property. In Linda's office, everybody does this. Everybody has one. We've been doing it for decades. And so, the recent court decision doesn't impact us at all. We were always very truthful with our client. Okay. So, compensation, that's the part most real estate agents are afraid of. But it talks about the varying stages of this. So I think you should have this available to go over with the person that just attended your open house, so that they can see, that you are actually a real estate professional and that you work, with a purpose. Okay. All right. That being said, we'll go back to the PowerPoint and see if I can get it to work. There we go. So have your agreement available, and again, have it filled out, have the agency disclosure there filled out. You don't have to do anything with the PVOH form, because all they do is sign it. So have 2 copies, right? So give if they sign the PVOH form, give them a copy. Maybe they sign 2 copies, or maybe you just give them a blank copy and you keep the one with their signature on. They can't deny they signed it. Okay. All right. Have your buyer consultation questionnaire on hand. And so I had the privilege and the honor of working with an agent at back in the old Prudential days, and she's still active today, and really just a super gal. I used to love conversations with her, but she would sit people down in the conference room, and she would ask them questions. And so she had a whole list of questions that she would ask them, and she would ask them. She had all these spreadsheets, and so she would ask them a question. She would write down the answer. 2.5 hours. I tell you, many a time I went up to the door and knocked on the door. Can I get you coffee or anything? And people would like, they were looking at me, and not like, save us from this, but more like, no, we're kind of busy right now. We're excited about talking with, Irene. And so I actually reached out to Irene a couple of months ago, and I said, I want you to know I talk about you all the time. And so she says, why? And I says, well, because I just think you're so good at that buyer consultation. I think you should have, like everybody should have what you have, and that is have a list of questions to ask them, because you actually care. But, on the other hand, I figure that if you spend 2.5 hours with Irene in the conference room, you would never work with a different real estate agent, right? Because you felt like you had to go through that again, right? And so I always laugh about that. She laughed. She thought it was funny, but at the end of the day, show them that you care. None of this meet them at the house, right? What kind of opportunity do you have of finding out what they're really looking for? The chances are that whatever they called you on isn't going to be the right house for them anyway, or it's going to be gone before you get there. And so, I'm not going to do this. I'm dropping everything I'm doing to show somebody a property. I want to find out, make sure, do I have all your hot buttons? Do I have all the things that are important to you in searching for a home? And so again, Irene's buyer consultation, she would just sit down with them for hours, and I just knew she's going to sell a house to these people, and she always did. She always got them. She was great about it. And we're, today, I'm sure all her stuff is in the millions. And so, be good at what you do, earn your money. Okay. All right. Questions so far? Okay. Moving right along. Treat everybody equally. And again, same questions for everybody. Okay. Always have somebody with you at your open house. We talked about this. I'll fly through this stuff a little bit here. 2 or more people to accompany you for your safety of the property, handle the rush. Bad people tend to travel in pairs, one to distract you while the other rummages through the property. And so, sorry about that. I got to turn off my phone keeps trying to answer my rhetorical questions. So lenders are great, as I said earlier, more likely to get the contact information, better at interviewing clients than we are. Pay attention, learn something new, have a guest register. And ask people to sign it. Now, I never was a real strong believer in the guest register, but I'm going to tell you what, I've changed. People will fill it out if you treat it with respect. And so the owner requires that all attendees sign in. That language is kind of stale, but I put it out there anyway. And then I've always, you always have the first one filled out. Let me show you an example of what we have. So we have here's my open house sign-in sheet. So my prospective homeowner registry, we call it. Thank you for visiting our open house. And as you can see, there's space on here for 4 see, so as I go down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 different people to complete it. I always have the first part filled out. Okay, that way they don't think that they're the first one. So by submitting this form with your telephone number, and again, we're going to talk about the federal do not call registry here in a second, but by submitting this form with your telephone number, you're consenting for authorized members of Burke Real Estate Consultants, Inc., the company, to contact you, even if your name is on the federal do not call registry or do not call list. Okay. And so I rarely ever see that language, and you have to have that language because the law says that just the fact that they put their phone number down there did not consent that you can call them. You or a member of your company can call them. And so that's why I put that in there. So, and then I always add, email address is always going to be easier than getting a phone number. Are you working with a realtor? Yes or no? What's the difference? I thought all realtors were alike. No, they aren't. My RA form, my realtor acknowledgement form will explain that. If yes, their name is, right? And so I'll have people who will say to me, I'll say, are you working with a realtor? And they'll say, yeah. And I go, really? Who is it? I probably know them. I mean, I've been doing this here for, since the beginning of time. And since just after the train was put in in front of my house, unfortunately. But, oh yeah, what's their name? And then they can't remember their name. And I'm all, well, they made quite an impression, didn't they? So I always say that. It lightens everything up. Everybody always says, oh yeah, we have a realtor because they don't want to buy something from me, kind of thing. But when they can't think of the realtor's name, then I'm usually going to make some fun about it and just say, oh, okay, I guess they made quite an impression. So it always seems to break the ice. And I'll never forget my business partner. We were at an open house one day, and we were always coming up with these really clever things. And so we're at an open house. This guy walks in, and she turns to him and she says, "Hi, my name is," and she gave him both names. And I always say, give them both your first and your last name, right? Because you're more likely to get a first and last name back. And then when they give you their first and last name, you always repeat it to them so that because people like to hear their name, right? And so anyway, in this particular situation, the guy comes in the door. She goes, "Hi, my name is," and shakes his hand, and then he's just quiet. She turns to him, she says, "And your name is?" And so I just thought this was classic because this was the girl voted the quietest girl in her high school. She spoke 4 words in 4 years. Somehow I changed all that, but and your name is? I'm sitting there going, oh my God, here we go. And so the individual says, "I'd rather not say." And she looks at him, she goes, "Can I buy a vowel?" I just thought I was going to lose it. I thought the funniest thing I ever heard. And then he realized the stupidity of what he was doing. And then they were best friends. He bought a house, from us. But it was just kind of funny, that breaking the ice thing. And what I said to you in the beginning when we got started today is I want you to kind of break out of your mold a little bit, think a little bit differently about things. But can I buy a vowel? Where did that come from? Okay, so that was pretty funny. But may I contact you? Yes or no? Okay, and what's your preferred method of contact? And so what type of home you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I'll always do with people at an open house is I will ask them for their card. Bad guys don't carry their card around with them. Okay, so but I'll ask, and if they have a card, I'll get their card before I'll ever give them my card. Because I want to get their card first, because if I give them my card first, then the answer is always, "I'll call you. I've got your card. I've got your number on your card." And so I'm usually Mr. Don't give out cards, collect cards. That's the way to do it. And I taught this for the red people for many, many years. I really think you should be collecting cards rather than giving them out. So anyway, that's our do not call compliant prospective homeowner registry form. And we do this at all of our open houses. I was kind of tickled that I found it again. I need to send this to our agents that are doing open houses. So that being said, note to Pamela, I'm going to send you this thing here. One other thing I forgot to tell you about is that the NAR the National Association of Realtors has a really good field guide to open houses. I remember reading this years ago, and it just got to be so extensive. So look at all this stuff, success stories, things like that. We have, oops, it's moving way too fast. Access information, password can be found on their password. So it's available to NAR members only, which you are. And then as I go down through this list, I've got the value of open houses. I don't know why it's not letting me do shorter hops here, but down here, the value, maybe if I make that bigger, let me see here. There we go. Is that easier to see? I think that is. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so easier to see. So as I scroll down, the value of open houses, lots of really good articles in there. 5 ways an open house can actually hurt your home sale. 3 properties where open houses work. Open house disguises the dinner party. So lots of really good information in here. Brief history of opening our homes to total strangers, that kind of thing. And so tips for success. So I will send all this to you if you have interest in it. All the things that I've been talking about today all came from all these articles. I had shown you earlier a list of the various things that have to do specifically with open house safety. And so this is my list. And so again, I'll send all these to you if you want it. There's my open house sign-in sheet, model home safety checklist, open house safety tips out of Realtor magazine. There's the Realtor acknowledgement form. So all of these things I'm more than happy to share with you. Just send me an email and I will get that over to you promptly today. The seller's property safety, showing safety checklist, tips for holding a safe open house. So I have a lot of those things that I think will be beneficial to you if you're interested. Back to my slide, the owner requires that all attendees sign in. Be sure it includes the federal do not call list language, as I said to you a second ago. SDAR has a great free open house kit. At least they did. I think they still do. So call down there, 858-715-8040. Again, 858-715-8040. You might have to go down there and pick it up, but it included the booties and the handy wipes and the face masks and all the stuff that you should have at your open house to show that you care. And so get a hold of San Diego about that. Property should be equipped with hand sanitizers. There's still, I had a visitor at the house today wearing a mask. And so it's just become kind of commonplace that people are wearing masks. And so, be aware that I think you should have disinfecting wipes. I think you should have face coverings. They're not required right now, although again we have another election coming up, so I'm assuming that we'll go into a lockdown again. Face coverings currently are not required, I should have said, but you should have them available for people that want them. Most likelihood is that they'll have their own, but okay, well, you should have one. Children should be accompanied at all times. We talked about that already. Remind the visitors of the PVOH form. That's my property visit open house advisory. Again, that falls in under the list of what took us so long. I always comment on that. I think we should have had that form out a lot sooner, much like the fair housing and discrimination advisory, I think should have come out many decades ago. But we did. We finally came out with it. I think it's a well-written piece. And you should be utilizing these forms. And then I always insist on, people come in and they say, well, I'm an agent, I'm a buyer's agent. So, oh, good. Can I have one of your cards? I'd like to give those over to the owner. So you notice how I said that in such a way that doesn't sound like a request. It sounds like a command. But I'm going to insist on those cards because, people will start floating around the house and I'm supposedly going to, hands off. No, I'm going to talk to them anyway. Right. But now if they are a buyer themselves and I do this, I equip my buyer, I give them a stack of cards and I say, go to as many open houses as you want, hand them my card, tell them you're working with me. And, invariably people tend to respect that. And so hopefully you have that same experience that people respect the fact that you have somebody that you're working with. I would not want to work with someone who's working with somebody else. That would be disrespectful. Okay. All right. Only licensees of the same brokerage may hold the house open. Again, it's a rule. If not a licensee, they may only distribute forms created and reviewed by the broker. I've had this conversation quite a bit lately. I'm going to have a hostess at the property or host at the property, not a licensee. They may not discuss price, terms, or negotiate offers. It's against the law. They have to have a real estate license in order to do that. And I can tell you that the Department of Real Estate is actively pursuing people that are doing this. So, don't be that next victim. It doesn't go well. Okay. We get a little overzealous, a little carried away. And so we want to make sure that we are compliant in the things that we do. Okay. All right. So again, the non-licensed individual may only distribute forms created and reviewed by the broker. Okay, so handing out listing, remember, if you're going to hand out copies of the listing, you may not hand out the agent handout. You may only accept to subscribers of our MLS. You may not give them to the public at large or non-licensees, non-subscribers to our MLS. If they are a non-subscriber, then you can only give them the client handout. Remember that the agent handout contains confidential information, and so including alarm codes and things like that. So it's inappropriate to give that to somebody that's at your open house that is not a subscriber to our MLS. Okay. All right. So if not a licensee associate with the same brokers, in other words, a licensee, but with a different brokerage firm, then there may be problems with agency, which we talked about more towards the beginning of today. And that is the conflict between, the agency at the door and then whether they work for that same agency. So usually that agency disclosure form is a good form to have. Let's talk about our after. If there aren't any questions so far, we'll talk about our after. If anything suspicious happens, immediately contact your broker, contact the seller's agent. Leave a note for the owner. So as you're leaving, make sure you leave a note for the owner. Let them know if anything unusual happened, okay, so that they can be on alert for it as well. Double check all the doors and windows. Remember, they're counting on you to secure their property. When you walk away from that property, you need to make sure that when they get home, that they can count on the fact that you made sure that they were the only ones in the house. So check all the doors and windows. Are they still on the hinges? I've had it happen where people have removed the hinges, left the door in place, but removed the hinges. Obviously, the intent is to come back later on and enter the property. Okay, so sometimes the bad guys come back after the open house, again, through access points that they created earlier. So that's why you want to make sure all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked, everything is all set, and just double check, look at those entry doors and make sure that the hinges are still there. Okay, turn off all the lights. Remember, when you got there, you turn on all the lights. I want you to turn off all the lights. And I do want you to be safe. I do want you to be prosperous. I do want you to be attentive. I want you to succeed. I want you to thrive in real estate, not just succeed. Okay. So thank you for joining us. Our Realtor Open House saved you, but I have a couple more things to tell you about. So stay tuned for our podcast. Those are coming. We're going to start doing those. On the 29th of November, and I just taped this on Friday, the Department of Real Estate, in their kindness, asked me to do a podcast with them. It was a question and answer, really good questions, and apparently I did fairly well. So the Department of Real Estate has created a First Home California website. So it's dre.ca.gov/consumers/firsthomecalifornia.html. So I know you can't click on this link, but that's where it is. If you go to the California Department of Real Estate and you just hit that / or just type in the search button, First Home California. So I was asked to be a guest speaker on the legal documentation in a real estate transaction. Somehow I have become known as the forms expert. And listen, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the Department of Real Estate, and the person doing the interview, he's such a Superman. Anyway, it was a great interview. I thought his questions were better than my answers, but great stuff. So be aware that's going to be published on the 29th of November. So we taped it on Friday. It'll go hot on the 29th of November. And again, you should go to look at that. There's a lot of really good material on that. Interestingly enough, they made a comment to me before I spoke, and that was that the majority of complaints that are filed with the CalDERE, the California Department of Real Estate, are from first-time home buyers. I said, I'm very saddened by that, because that means that that maybe we don't know what we're talking about. And so, our usual brush off the question kind of thing is unfortunately bad news for the first time home buyer who really wants to know. So, my saying has always been, that's a great question. Let me find out and I'll get back to you. So I never admitted I didn't know what it was, the answer was, but let me find out and I'll get back to you. So sometimes we either, give an answer that's not accurate, so that would be a negligent misrepresentation, or we might give an answer that is clearly wrong and we know is wrong, which would be intentional misrepresentation. That's never good. All right. But we really need to respect the question, and we really need to give these people the proper answer. And again, that's a bad statement for us, that the majority of complaints are from first-time home buyers. I think that's so sad. I have made a career off of entry-level housing. I prefer the first-time home buyer. They're willing to learn. I'm willing to teach. And I'm not, it's not just another score for me. Okay. So that's the part that really upsets me, but treat them with respect and take good care of them. But again, I'd rather do a $250,000 property than a $6 million property. I'll do the 6 million. I don't mind doing that. But at the end of the day, I find that my entry-level housing, my first-time home buyers tend to be the most respectful and the most appreciative. And I think that's really, really important. So be aware, we are also going to do our own podcast in light of all of that. I'm going to probably begin with the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. So I will be doing a webinar on it next week for SDAR. It'll be a 2-hour webinar, but then I'm also going to be doing podcasts. And so those will be Q&A podcasts. They'll be based on, individual paragraphs, things like that. So, I can break that buyer representation agreement down into its component parts pretty easily, and help not only you to understand what it says, but also how to get it in front of the client and get them to sign it. And so, sell your services, not your price kind of thing. So, if you want to review any of our previous webinars, you can review visit our new YouTube website. So here's the QR code. So if you have a QR code reader on your phone, which chances are you do, you just point it at the image there, and it'll take you to the website. And then you can also go to bit.ly/real-estate-ed. Case is important here. You can also, please, if you do go there, if you would like and subscribe. Like just because it makes me feel good. Subscribe because I think I'm really posting relevant material, important things for you to know. And all subscribe does is that when you log in to the YouTube account, it will post that I've loaded another YouTube video. So this video will go online later on this afternoon. And again, because I want it to be available. And I get calls from these things all the time. And so, and again, I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. So like just because it makes me feel good, subscribe because you want to do better in your business. Plus, if you have subscribed to our website, you're going to know when I'm doing the podcasts. So I'm just itching to start with it. But my technical side of people are delaying me a little bit, only because they're trying to get the launch of it to be good. We have the prosecutor for Huntington Beach going to talk about a real estate transaction that went very wrong. We have a lot of attorneys who are going to come on, and we're going to do a lot of legal stuff, and I'm going to get to be the moderator and to talk to them about these things. And then obviously some of it will be live, some of it will be reposted, things like that. So I want you to be okay. I want you to be able to do your business without fear. If you have any other subjects that you would think would be of interest, please let SDAR know. Education@sdar.com. You can send it to them, copy me. You can send it to me, copy them, whichever. Somebody will get back to you on that. I did have an attorney who asked me to do a talk on agency, and I said, well, I don't know if we can do that in an hour, but anyways, we'll try it. I do have a newsletter that goes out. Again, you want to get the newsletter, okay? Because if you get the newsletter, then you'll know when, when we're shifting direction, when we're doing other things. So you've got to send a request to be subscribed. I'm not going to put you on there automatically. I will put you on there if you ask. Everybody that's on it, and I have a 63% open rate, which I think is just unheard of. But everybody that's on it has asked to be on it. So obviously it's relevant enough that people are opening it. And I think I've fallen below 50% once. And that's usually around the holidays. So anyway, that's it. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Happy to help you in any way that I can. Send me an email. That's the easiest way to do things. Or you can always call me on the phone. I'm more than happy to speak with you on the phone. So I want to thank you all for being here today. And hopefully I get to see you later on today about 2 o'clock. I'll be doing the preliminary title report. That's always entertaining. And I look forward to seeing you at that time. So thank you all. If there aren't any other questions, I appreciate the value of your time. And as we say from my hometown of Del Mar, I look forward to seeing you around the track. Take care for now. Bye-bye, everybody.